What if the king of rock and roll, the man the world adored, was hiding a secret so personal it could shake the image we've clung to for decades? One quiet afternoon, a young woman stumbled upon a handwritten letter tucked away where it didn't belong. It wasn't meant for her eyes, but once she read it, everything changed. It exposed whispers of a hidden affection, a double life unfolding behind closed doors. Today, we peel back the velvet curtain on a story Elvis never wanted told, a tangled romance concealed in plain sight. In the early days of his skyrocketing fame, Elvis Presley wasn't just a musical sensation, he was the very definition of a heartthrob. With his slicked-back hair, velvet voice, and smoldering stage presence, he had the world at his feet. But fame, as we know, doesn't come without complication. Even while he served his country overseas in Germany, Elvis remained the object of adoration back home. Millions swooned, and among them was someone who held a very real place in his life. Not just a fan, but a girlfriend. Anita Wood wasn't just any young woman. She was a rising star in her own right, a popular TV personality and singer, admired not only for her beauty, but for her talent and charm. Elvis and Anita's relationship was no tabloid fantasy. It had the markings of something deeper. She stood by him even as he was stationed thousands of miles away, believing in the love they shared. While Elvis posed for military photos and took part in drills on European soil, Anita was back home, holding on to the hope that one day they'd pick up where they left off. The world may have seen Elvis as untouchable, but to Anita, he was something much more human, someone worth waiting for. Letters were exchanged, phone calls made, and promises whispered across continents. But as the months wore on, something subtle began to shift. Unseen forces were quietly at play, weaving threads of doubt into what once felt like a solid bond. The timeline was moving forward, but so were other things. Things Anita never saw coming. It started as an ordinary day. No red flags, no reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. But sometimes, the smallest discoveries carry the weight of an earthquake. While Elvis was still publicly in a relationship with Anita, something unexpected caught her eye. It was a letter, not to her, and certainly not from a fan. The handwriting was delicate, almost childlike, and the name signed at the bottom was unfamiliar: Priscilla. Anita's curiosity turned to unease as she began to read. What she found wasn't harmless admiration, it was emotional, pleading. "You need to call my daddy and talk him into letting me come over," the girl had written. "I want to come really bad." This wasn't a typical fan's dream. It was personal, intimate. Anita's heart raced as she processed the words, the meaning behind them settling in like a heavy fog. Who was this girl? Why was she writing to Elvis with such urgency and familiarity? She wasn't jumping to conclusions. This letter spoke for itself. With the paper still trembling in her hand, Anita decided to confront him. She waited until he came back from the studio, her thoughts spiraling into questions she didn't want to ask but couldn't hold back. When she finally demanded answers, she was met with a strange calm from Elvis. Too calm. He brushed it off, claiming the girl was just a child, a 14-year-old with a bad crush. According to him, she meant nothing. A family friend, the daughter of an old army buddy, someone who simply looked up to him. He said it with such ease, like he believed it, or wanted her to believe it. But Anita felt the temperature drop between them. His explanation, instead of putting her at ease, only made the air heavier. Something about the way he smoothed it over, too quickly, too neatly, left her with a gnawing doubt. The words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened the sense that she had uncovered the first thread of something much bigger. Elvis didn't flinch. As Anita held the letter in front of him like a piece of damning evidence, he barely raised an eyebrow. He gave a soft chuckle, the kind meant to disarm, and waved it off as if it were nothing more than a silly misunderstanding. "She's just a young 14-year-old child," he said. "She's got a little crush, that's all. You know how kids are." His voice was calm, maybe too calm, like he'd rehearsed the line or said it before. He painted a picture of innocence, a harmless girl with stars in her eyes, caught up in the fantasy of knowing someone famous. To make things even more benign, he added that they were simply family friends. Her father, he explained, was an old army buddy. someone he respected. They were just close-knit, like family, he said. And this girl, she just wanted to visit America, maybe meet some of the people she'd heard stories about. Elvis leaned into the narrative, trying to wrap the entire situation in warmth and nostalgia. He wasn't involved with her, not in the way Anita feared. According to him, the connection meant absolutely nothing, but Anita felt the cracks forming beneath his words. Something didn't sit right. It wasn't just what Elvis said, it was the way he said it. Too smooth, too effortless, as if the excuse had been loaded and ready to go. Her gut twisted. She had been around long enough to know when someone was dodging the truth. The way Elvis minimized everything only made her feel smaller, like her concerns were irrational, like she was being unreasonable for feeling what she felt. But deep down, she knew. Intuition has a way of speaking even when everything else tells you to stay quiet. And it's in those quiet moments, when someone swears there's nothing to see, that we start to notice everything. Anita couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the full story. A letter like that doesn't just come from nowhere. A name like that doesn't appear once and vanish. And a man like Elvis doesn't make a mistake unless there's something or someone he's trying to protect. The room may have been still, but a storm had started brewing beneath the surface, and Anita wasn't the only one who would feel its impact. Behind closed doors, the story started to shift. While Elvis was offering calm reassurances to Anita, insisting everything was innocent and above board, his closest companions were hearing something entirely different. Red West, Elvis's longtime friend and bodyguard, wasn't just a bystander. He was part of the inner circle, the crew that saw what happened when the stage lights dimmed and the crowds went home. And what he remembers tells a very different story. According to Red, Elvis wasn't just casually mentioning this mysterious girl. He was obsessed. Her name, Priscilla, kept surfacing more and more, slipping into conversations where it didn't quite belong. At first, Red didn't think much of it. Elvis had a tendency to fall hard and fast, to romanticize people and ideas with the same intensity he brought to his music. But something about this was different. The way Elvis spoke about her, the look in his eyes, it wasn't just passing interest. He started hinting that he was thinking about someone new, someone who made him feel different. And every time he did, the name Priscilla followed. What was once a whispered mention turned into a recurring theme, a name echoing through the walls of Graceland, like a song stuck on repeat. Then came the moment that stopped Red in his tracks. When Elvis finally revealed that the girl he'd been talking about wasn't even 15 years old yet, Red was floored. When he told me she wasn't yet 15, I nearly had a heart attack, he admitted years later. It wasn't just shocking, it was alarming. Red had seen Elvis infatuated before, but this was something else entirely. It didn't make sense, it didn't sit right, and most of all, it didn't match the story Elvis was feeding to Anita. That's where the cracks really began to show. The contrast between Elvis's public defense and his private admissions was impossible to ignore. To Anita, he was a loving partner with nothing to hide, just a victim of an overzealous fan with a schoolgirl crush. But to his friends, he was already emotionally invested, already sliding down a path that had little to do with friendship. The contradictions raised questions. Why hide the truth from Anita? What was he trying to protect or prevent from coming to light? One thing was clear. Someone wasn't getting the full story, and maybe no one really was. As the months passed, the truth began to unravel, not in sudden bursts, but in quiet, undeniable signs that chipped away at the version of reality Anita had clung to. Elvis wasn't merely tolerating a young admirer's attention, he was actively nurturing it. Behind the carefully chosen words and casual dismissals, he had already extended a very real invitation. Priscilla, the girl he had painted as a harmless child with a fleeting crush, had been asked to visit the United States. This wasn't speculation or gossip. It was a deliberate, documented step that signaled something far deeper than Elvis had admitted. The idea of a one-sided obsession began to crumble when Anita noticed the consistency of the communication. Letters didn't stop after that first one. They continued. And Elvis wasn't just replying, he was encouraging. He wasn't dodging her contact, he was making arrangements. There were plans, secretive but purposeful, involving flights and phone calls and promises. The timeline spoke volumes. While Elvis played the part of the loyal boyfriend in public, his private life was unfolding in an entirely different direction. The bad crush he had shrugged off now looked more like an emerging relationship he didn't want anyone to question too soon. And Anita, she saw it. She felt it before she could prove it. And when the pieces finally clicked into place, the hurt was sharper than she expected. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't some innocent confusion blown out of proportion. It was a carefully crafted deflection, designed to keep her in the dark while another connection grew stronger behind her back. What once seemed like a bump in the road now looked like a fork in the path, one that Elvis had already taken without telling her. And in that quiet realization, Anita understood that the story she thought she was living had changed, and she hadn't even been given the courtesy of turning the page. After years of standing beside one of the most famous men in the world, Anita made the kind of decision that doesn't come easily. In 1962, after countless memories, long-distance calls, and unspoken doubts, she walked away. It wasn't a dramatic exit or a public spectacle. It was a quiet, resolute goodbye, rooted in something deeper than hurt. Anita wasn't just ending a relationship. She was reclaiming her clarity, her self-worth. She had given Elvis her youth, her trust, and the benefit of the doubt more times than she could count. But when it came to building a future, it became clear that they were walking in different directions. What Anita wanted wasn't unreasonable. She dreamed of marriage, a home, a family. She was in her early 20s watching her friends settle down while she remained in limbo. And Elvis, for all his charm and affection, couldn't give her what she needed. Not because he didn't care, but because someone else had already started to occupy the space Anita once held. There was always a reason, always a delay. But over time, the excuses wore thin. It wasn't just about career demands or timing. It was about someone else quietly waiting in the wings, someone who had already changed the course of Elvis's heart without ever standing in the spotlight. Even Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, saw the sadness in the unraveling. He gently hoped the two might find their way back to each other someday, that time would soften the hurt and bring them full circle. But Anita had reached her limit. She knew the difference between holding on out of love and holding on out of habit. So she let go. She didn't wait for apologies or explanations. She made a clean break, not out of bitterness, but out of strength. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself when someone else keeps choosing something, or someone else. In the aftermath of it all, one question still lingers like a stubborn echo. Was Elvis ever truly in love? Or was he simply captivated by the idea of what love looked like in the mirror of fame? With every spotlight came the pressure to perform not just on stage, but in life. To be the man everyone expected, the heartthrob, the legend, the untouchable. But somewhere along the way, the lines blurred. Did he pursue what his heart wanted, or what his image demanded? And in chasing the ideal, did he lose sight of what was real? Anita's story is more than just a chapter in Elvis's life. It's a quiet testament to the resilience of someone who loved deeply and lost without a headline. She stood in the background while the world worshipped her boyfriend, navigating the emotional minefield of a relationship shadowed by celebrity. Her strength wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in the grace with which she let go, in the dignity she maintained when the truth became too loud to ignore. Fame never just belongs to the famous. It trickles down and tests the people around them, the ones who never signed up for the spotlight, but are somehow always standing in it. And now, decades later, we're still left wondering. Was Priscilla really just a wide-eyed girl with an innocent crush? Or was she part of a plan that had been unfolding all along, slowly and silently? Did Elvis manipulate the story? Or was he swept up in it like everyone else? The truth perhaps lies somewhere in between. But one thing is certain. What seemed like a simple love triangle was far more complex than anyone imagined. What do you believe? If stories like this make you pause, reflect, or even question what you thought you knew, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another deep dive into the hidden corners of iconic lives. Like this video if it kept you watching, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear what you think. Was this all part of Elvis's image? or something far more personal? Let's talk about it.